Question 516. An escrow officer is generally authorized to A. Recommend the best financing options to the buyer. B. Suggest to the seller that he reconsider the payment arrangements as they seem unfair. C. Hire the new home security company for the property. D. Prepare the estimated closing statement. Correct answer is D. Prepare the estimated closing statement. An escrow officer is a neutral third party responsible for facilitating the real estate transaction according to the instructions provided by the buyer and seller in the escrow agreement. Their primary duties revolve around the handling of funds and documents to ensure a smooth closing. Preparing the estimated closing statement, which outlines the anticipated costs and credits for both parties, falls squarely within these responsibilities. Recommending financing options is the role of a mortgage broker or lender, who has expertise in financial products and the buyer's specific financial situation. Escrow officers are neutral facilitators and do not provide financial advice. Escrow officers must remain neutral and follow the terms of the agreed-upon purchase agreement. Offering personal opinions on the fairness of the arrangements is outside their purview and could be seen as biased or interfering with the contract. Arranging for services like home security is the responsibility of the buyer, after closing, or the seller, before closing, if desired. The escrow officer's role is limited to the financial and document transfer aspects of the transaction. Question 517. Landowner Larry conveys a deed to his property to Sam. The property contains coal. Sam now owns the right to extract and sell the coal, unless the A. Mineral rights were reserved by the former owner. B. Mineral rights were recorded. C. Mineral rights were previously sold to another party. D. Both A and C. Correct answer is D. Both A and C. When Larry conveyed the deed to Sam, Larry could have explicitly reserved, kept back for himself, the mineral rights. If this reservation was clearly stated in the deed, then Sam's ownership would not include the right to extract and sell the coal. If, prior to conveying the property to Sam, Larry had already sold the mineral rights to a third party, that third party would retain the ownership of those rights. Larry could only convey the rights he still possessed. Sam's new deed would be subject to this prior sale. While recording the mineral rights provides public notice of their ownership, the act of recording itself doesn't determine who owns them. The ownership is established by the conveyance documents, reservation in Larry's deed to Sam or a prior sale to another party. Recording simply documents that ownership. Therefore, Sam would not own the right to extract and sell the coal if Larry had either reserved those rights in the deed to Sam or had previously sold them to someone else. Question 518. For two parties to have a meeting of the minds, leading to the formation of a contract, it is demonstrated by A. Contractual consultation. B. Consideration. C. Acknowledgement. D. Offer and acceptance. Correct answer is D. Offer and acceptance. While discussion and negotiation might lead to an offer and acceptance, the consultation itself doesn't necessarily demonstrate that an agreement has been reached. Consideration is the something of value exchanged between the parties, which is a necessary element for a valid contract, but it doesn't directly prove that the parties had a shared understanding of the terms. An acknowledgement is often a formal declaration that someone has signed a document, but it doesn't inherently prove that there was a mutual understanding of the contract's substance. A. Meeting of the minds, also known as mutual assent, signifies that both parties to a contract understand and agree to the fundamental terms and obligations of the agreement. This mutual understanding is typically demonstrated through the process of 1. Offer. One party proposes specific terms and conditions. 2. Acceptance. The other party unequivocally agrees to those terms and conditions. The offer and the acceptance together show that the parties have reached a shared understanding of what they are agreeing to, thus establishing the meeting of the minds necessary for contract formation. Question 519. The salespersons at Grover Realty work strictly on commission, which they share with broker, owner Greg Grover. However, the broker deducts no withholding or social security tax from those commissions. The salespeople pay for the use of any secretarial, phones or copying service. They accept referrals from broker Grover which they can accept or decline. The salespersons are classifiable as A. Employees, B. Independent contractors, C. Business acquaintances, D. As described, they are not salespersons at all, but office temps. Correct answer is B. Independent contractors. The lack of tax withholding and the responsibility for office expenses are inconsistent with employee status. Business acquaintances is too informal and doesn't describe the structured working relationship within a real estate brokerage. There is clearly a business agreement in place for commission sharing and property representation. Several factors point towards an independent contractor relationship. 1. No withholding or social security tax. The broker's failure to deduct these taxes is a strong indicator that the salespeople are being treated as independent contractors, as these deductions are standard for employees. 2. Paying for services. Employees typically do not pay for office services like secretarial support, phones, or copying. These are usually provided by the employer. The salespeople bearing these costs suggests they are operating more independently. Accepting or declining referrals. The ability to accept or decline referrals indicates a level of control over their work that is more characteristic of independent contractors than employees, who are generally expected to follow assignments from their employer. Question 520. A habendum clause is usually found in an A. Mortgage, B. Land contract, C. Escrow account, D. Deed. Correct answer is D. Deed. Habendum clause is a standard part of a legal document, most commonly found in a deed for real estate. It's often called the to have and to hold clause because it typically begins with that phrase, derived from Latin, habendum et tenendum. In essence, the habendum clause defines the extent of the interest and rights that the grantee, the person receiving the property, is receiving in the property. It clarifies the type of ownership being transferred, such as 1. Fee simple absolute, full and unconditional ownership, to have and to hold forever. 2. Life estate, ownership for the duration of someone's life, to have and to hold for the life of the grantee. 3. Other limitations or conditions. The clause might specify restrictions on the property's use or the duration of ownership. While most commonly associated with deeds, habendum clauses can also appear in other legal documents like leases, especially oil and gas leases, where they define the term of the lease. Therefore, the habendum clause is a crucial part of a deed as it clearly states what the new owner is entitled to regarding the property rights. Question 521. Deeds are recorded and indexed based on A. Year of the recording, B. Grantor and grantee's names in alphabetical order, C. Location of the property, D. Legal description of the property. Correct answer is B. Grantor and grantee's names in alphabetical order. When deeds are recorded at the county recorder's office, they are typically indexed in two main ways. 1. Grantor index. Alphabetical listing by the name of the person or entity transferring the property, the seller. 2. Grantee index. Alphabetical listing by the name of the person or entity receiving the property, the buyer. This alphabetical indexing by name allows title companies, legal professionals, and the public to trace the chain of title for a property by searching the records for past and present owners. Question 522. The following is not a major participant in the secondary mortgage market. A. Ginnie Mae, B. Fannie Mae, C. Federal Reserve Board, D. Freddie Mac. Correct answer is C. Federal Reserve Board. The secondary mortgage market is primarily driven by government-sponsored enterprises, GSEs, and agencies. These entities purchase mortgages from original lenders, then either keep these loans or transform them into mortgage-backed securities, MBS, for investors. This process provides liquidity to the primary mortgage market, encouraging further lending. These participants play a crucial role in providing liquidity to the primary mortgage market, making it easier for lenders to issue more mortgages. The options provided include A. Ginnie Mae, Government National Mortgage Association. Ginnie Mae is a government corporation within the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. It guarantees MBS backed by federally insured or guaranteed loans, like FHA and VA loans, playing a significant role in the secondary market. B. Fannie Mae, Federal National Mortgage Association. Fannie Mae is a government-sponsored enterprise, now under government conservatorship, that purchases conventional mortgages and securitizes them. It is a major player in the secondary market. D. Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation. Freddie Mac is also a government-sponsored enterprise, also under government conservatorship, that purchases and securitizes conventional mortgages, similar to Fannie Mae, making it a key participant in the secondary market. The Federal Reserve Board, also known as the Fed, is the central bank of the United States. The Fed plays a critical role in the overall financial system and influences interest rates and monetary policy. It is not a major direct participant in the secondary mortgage market in the same way that Ginnie Mae, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac are. The Fed's actions can indirectly impact the mortgage market, but it doesn't typically buy and sell mortgages or mortgage-backed securities on a large scale to provide liquidity in the same way as the other three. Therefore, the entity that is not a major participant in the secondary mortgage market among the options provided is the Federal Reserve Board. Question 523. Easements can be terminated in the following ways, except A. Merger of the dominant and servient tenement. B. Prescription by the owner of the servient tenement. C. Revocation by the owner of the servient tenement. D. Release provided to the owner of the servient tenement. Correct answer is C. Revocation by the owner of the servient tenement. An easement grants a non-owner the right to use a portion of another person's property, the servient tenement, for a specific purpose. The owner of the servient tenement, the burdened property, generally cannot unilaterally revoke a validly created easement simply because they change their mind. Once established, an easement is a property right that runs with the land. Let's look at why the other options are valid ways to terminate an easement. A. Merger of the dominant and servient tenement. If the ownership of the property benefiting from the easement, dominant tenement, and the property burdened by the easement, servient tenement, come under the same owner, the easement is automatically terminated. You cannot have an easement over your own land. B. Prescription by the owner of the servient tenement. This is essentially the opposite of creating an easement by prescription. If the owner of the servient tenement openly, notoriously, hostilely, and continuously interferes with the easement rights for the statutory period, the easement can be terminated. D. Release provided to the owner of the servient tenement. The owner of the dominant tenement, the one benefiting from the easement, can voluntarily release their easement rights by executing a written release and recording it. This effectively terminates the easement. Therefore, the owner of the servient tenement revoking the easement on their own accord is generally not a valid way to terminate it. The easement is a right held by another party and cannot be extinguished at the whim of the burdened property owner. Question 524. If a borrower makes full payment on a note secured by trust deed on his property, the trust deed beneficiary must arrange for the reconveyance within A. 5 days of the payment, B. Within 30 days of the payment, C. Within 6 weeks of the payment, D. There is no time deadline to make the reconveyance. Correct answer is B. Within 30 days of the payment. In California, Where trust deeds are the common security instrument for real estate loans, the law specifies a timeframe for the beneficiary, lender, to take action once the loan is paid in full. California Civil Code Section 2941 outlines these requirements. Specifically, upon full payment and satisfaction of the secured obligation, the beneficiary is required to request the trustee to execute and record a full reconveyance of the trust deed. This action must be taken within 30 days of the payment. Therefore, the trust deed beneficiary has 30 days from the date the borrower makes the full payment to arrange for the reconveyance of the trust deed, thereby clearing the lien from the property title. Question 525. During escrow, prepaid rents are usually. Prepaid rent covers a period that extends beyond the date the buyer takes ownership of the property. Since the buyer will be the one providing tenancy for the portion of the prepaid period after closing, they are entitled to the benefit of that prepaid rent. Since the buyer will be the one providing tenancy for the portion of the prepaid period after closing, they are entitled to the benefit of that prepaid rent. Therefore, during escrow, the seller is considered to have collected rent for a period they will no longer own the property. To compensate the buyer for this, the prepaid rent is credited to the buyer on the closing statement. This reduces the amount of money the buyer needs to bring to closing. Conversely, the prepaid rent is effectively debited to the seller, increasing the amount they might owe or reducing the net proceeds they receive from the sale. In essence, the buyer receives the financial benefit of rent that has already been paid for the period of their ownership.